What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Men's Journal Everyday Warrior podcast. I've got Scott Shigeoka.
Gayoka, yep. There you go. You got it.
Okay, I'm going to work on that one. Never screw your guest's name up. It just starts off on a bad foot, man. Scott, congrats on the book. This
Thank
is
you so
awesome.
much.
And the book we're talking about is Seek, How Curiosity Can Transform Your Life and Change the World.
Yes, it can.
I'm fascinated by curiosity because I think it's one of the major attributes to constant evolution in the pursuit of excellence.
Yes.
So, but Scott, before we get into it, in the career you've built and the expertise, you consider yourself, you said, an island boy at heart. You now live in the Bay Area. But give the audience just a sense of your earlier life and what led you to here.
Yeah, totally. So I'm born and raised in Hawaii, small community of Aiea in the island of Oahu. Public school kid, my whole life. And yeah, just had a super wonderful experience growing up in many ways, intergenerational household. It was, there were some challenging moments too. But overall, I'm super grateful. We talk a lot about the aloha spirit in Hawaii. Like that's very much what I grew up with, about giving, being generous, creating community. So I feel so blessed to be there. And then I moved to the mainland. That's what people from Hawaii call, the rest of the U.S. For school. And I've been, in the Bay and in California for the last 10 years. And, living and loving, just having a good time and being joyful and, looking at the world, always looking at the world around me, looking at the world inside of me. And just, like you said, constantly growing as much as I can. So
you want to call me a Hollyman? Or is it Hollyman? Hollyman.
Well, I think, it's interesting, when we think about, Haole is ha and ole ha is breath, ole without it. So, it's just, foreigners are, and I'm a settler too, right? Like I'm not Kanaka Maoli. I'm not from Hawaii. Like I'm not native Hawaiian. So, ha'ole, to be without breath, we did not greet in that way because we're foreigners. Like we don't know, the customs or what it means to be indigenous. So in many ways, but you and I are both like, in some ways, settlers and guests on the island. So that's why I'm extra grateful, it's because it is such a important and beautiful place. But have you been to Hawaii?
Several times.
I felt that from you, actually. Yeah.
Buddies that were stationed over there, and it's, dude, you either get hot or cold. They're like, loved it, would move there permanently if I could. And other guys are like island fever. And I don't understand how anyone could get island fever with the amount of things you can do, whether hiking in the mountains or surfing and just enjoying the beach. It's all perspective and, again, curiosity.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah, and the culture is amazing. People out there are some of the friendliest in the country, I would say, and we show up for each other. We're very community minded. I remember picking mangoes with my grandparents out of my backyard. I had a mango tree, and we would give it to our neighbors. We'd give it to, the mailman. We'd give it to the grocery like clerk. We'd give it to, the bus driver. I mean, I love that I grew up in a place that was so warm, not just climate wise, but in the climate of the people. So, I'm super grateful to be from there. Community
makes it home.
Yeah,
it's the difference, and we're losing that in the mainland. Some places still have it, larger places don't. But Scott, the more singular of a focus with books, they seem to do a lot better because you just dive into the science.
Yeah.
What did you get your college degree in?
Journalism. Yeah. So I was trained as a journalist. My first journalism job is as a music writer at the Washington Post. So interviewing folks like, and writing stories about folks like Big Boy from Outkast or Michael Kiwanuka, Empire of the Sun, folks who are rolling through the DC area doing shows and, using my curiosity to get to know them. What are you all about? What's, not just like I wasn't a music critic. I was more about telling the story of who that musician, is, their life, their relationships, what's, just try like almost like human interest feature stories about really interesting musicians and humanizing them, because I think a lot of like celebrities are, you put up on this pedestal or othered, in some ways. And, they're human, they are like they got wants, they got needs, they have love, they have grief, just like all of us. And so it was that was a beautiful sort of position to have. But it was wild because I was working at a Ruby Tuesday in Maryland. I had hitchhiked across the US, ran out of money. My student loans like grace period was over, and I was like, oh dang, I need a job. So I like went on Craigslist, was in this group house with 10 people in Maryland working at this Ruby Tuesday, and I went to this writer's workshop that was free because I literally had no money in my savings account. And the teacher of that course, she was like, you're interesting, like you have like this interesting vibe about you, and you know your writing's pretty good, like send me some of your stuff. So I sent her some articles I'd done, and she said, oh, you know, I don't know if you know this, but I'm an editor at the Washington Post, and I want to give you a job, you know, or like a shot at a job, you know, to apply for. And so it's just wild too when, you know, all it takes is one person to kind of see you and, you know, get you to a place of growth and expansion. And that really set my journey as a storyteller for sure.
Do you consider yourself a storyteller?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. My whole family is like storytellers. You know, it's like my dad was like, when he was alive, he was like, all right, let me gather around and let me tell you about, you know, 14 generations ago when these star-crossed lovers, your great grandparents, let me tell you about their love story. So I have those stories. It's really, it's really cool to have grown up in that kind of a family for sure.
Dude, storytelling. I went and got my MBA. And
yeah.
I thought I was going venture capital or private equity.
Got it.
Because I've met a lot of guys. And now I'm in storytelling.
Yeah.
Life is such a odd path that you just go where life leads you. But exactly. Storytelling is like, it's oral history passed down. Same as leadership. It's oral history passed down. What I'm curious about.
I see what you did there. Okay, Mike.
What led you to this specific topic where you said, hey, I want to take 2 years of my life and write a book on curiosity? I mean, was it an incident or was it a compilation of events that you started picking off curiosity in people and it just fascinated you?
Yeah, it's been a compilation of events for sure. I mean, one big moment is in 2017, I was going through like a rough patch, and I was actually celebrating a friend's birthday in Joshua Tree, which I actually lived there and wrote the book in Joshua Tree. I just recently moved from Joshua Tree. I was there for a couple of years, but this was before I really had a ton of, you know, connection to the area. I was at a birthday party, went on a psychedelic journey that basically did not stop for me. I had a really hard and bad trip. That was actually really revealing. And like, you know, months later, I realized why I went through it, but at the time it was very disorienting. I write about this in the book. I started to hear voices on that trip, and, the next day I still heard them. I was at In and Out with my friends, and I like still heard the voices, and I was like, oh, that's like weird. Like maybe, I just need to take a good long rest tonight and they'll go away. And then they just kept happening every day. Like I just kept hearing these voices, and I worked with someone at UCSF, and that he basically, I was like at this point at weeks, of hearing voices, having auditory hallucinations. And he was asking me questions. He was being really curious. He was like, what are they saying? Are they voices that you've heard before? And essentially what he told me is, you're spending so much time trying to push these voices away, but I actually want to invite you to get curious about them, to really explore why they're coming up for you, because the more you push them away, the louder they're going to get in a way. And he was right. He really helped me through this really hard moment. And I learned, wow, like curiosity can open us up to so much self-understanding, and also can be a force of healing. Like when I started to get curious towards my voices, that's when they started to become more clear that they were voices I've heard in the past that were coming through my like psyche or whatever was happening. I don't know exactly what was happening, but it was revealing sort of suppressed memories that I've had forgotten about in my childhood. And I got to heal through a lot of that because of these voices. So I'm like grateful for them. I was like terrified. I was like, oh shit, this is going to be my life forever. But in the end, like 6 months later, I was really grateful for them. So that was a big inciting moment of like curiosity. There's something about turning towards the things that we are afraid of and that make us anxious. In my case, the voices I was hearing, that is really powerful. And like, I was trying to look around to see like, is anyone talking about this? Like not just an intellectual curiosity of like learning through books or Wikipedia or something, but this heart-centered curiosity that's about, turning towards ourselves or turning towards others so that we can deepen our understanding and heal and like feel more connection.
Well, now you just scared the living shit out of me because a few of us are headed to Rhythmia Resort January 6th to 13th to do ayahuasca. I think we do 4 journeys. Mm-hmm. And one of the big guys is John Welborn, who actually played football at UC Berkeley and then the NFL. And you can tell he's 280 pounds.
Yep.
He's a little nervous because we don't know what to expect. But everyone that's done it has said it opened up doors and basically pushed trauma to the front that they had compartmentalized in ways, and that it forced them to deal with it in order to put those obstacles down and move forward. So very interesting you say that, man. I'm interested. I mean, from my profession, the people that were the most curious, always looking, and I guess outward, when I'm talking about outward in the sense of, hey, why are we doing things the way we're doing them? Is there a better way to do it? What makes this work? And especially people with relationships, curious about other people's stories.
Yeah.
How in this, you basically say curiosity impacts personal growth, relationships, and your self-worth.
Yeah.
So walk me through the book, man, of what readers are going to expect. And maybe like, if you want to focus on the top 3 things that they're going to learn or take away from this book that will impact their lives and potentially give them another way of looking at things.
Yeah, I think, the big thing for me to just like, or for anyone who's, listening and wants to know, like, what's this curiosity, right? Like this desire to know, what does it actually do for our relationships? Well, I asked folks to think about times when they felt like someone was incurious about them, like maybe their parent was incurious about them, or their sibling, or a coworker, a boss, anyone, their partner. And, you have all these things that you want to share. You have all these thoughts, about a topic. You have dreams that you want to like, share with people and kind of like, bounce ideas. But if no one's like turning towards you with questions and no one's genuinely interested in what you have to say and no one cares, because they're incurious, how does that make you feel? And oftentimes it makes you feel totally, not valued, not seen, not heard. It makes you feel like shit. It makes me feel that way. And it doesn't make me feel like you matter. And so now we have this, groups of people, because I think we're in this era of incuriosity where we're cutting people, canceling people, turning away from them. We're unwilling to listen to people because we feel like we know everything about them once we find out how they vote, their religion, their sexuality, whatever it is, and there's so much more for us to actually learn about a person. But when we say, I know everything I need to know about you, and we turn away from them with incuriosity, or I've been married to you for 20 years, or something I need to know about you, I know everything, we turn away from them with incuriosity, then we cut off that opportunity for connection. We make people feel like they don't matter. And so that is what curiosity is about. When we are genuinely interested in what people think about and care about and what they value in their stories, they feel like they matter. And so that's the power of curiosity. That's why I call it a heart-centered force, because it's about opening that door for connection with other people, even people that are very different from you too,
It's we used to use a line. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah, love that.
And it's interesting. You bring up, I don't want to say politics, but you bring up modern society, and it's that we're completely shutting down the way that other people view things rather than diving in.
Absolutely.
It's almost in the buzzword we're hearing a lot is moral superiority. That my way is correct,
exactly.
You're wrong.
Yep.
Do you see that as a destruction of finding common ground and actually just accepting people for who they are and finding, again, some sort of middle ground from which people can build relationships and move forward?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, 2 stories that come to mind. One is the whole reason why I got into writing Seek is because of the 2016 elections. I mean, I think most people in their families or in their communities or on social media, there was all this rupture that was happening, because people were voting in different ways. And, it's still happening today, in politics. We're so polarized right now as a country. And, it's exactly for that reason. We are clinging on so hard to our own views, unwilling to see the humanity of someone who, thinks or believes in a different way. And, I set off on this 12-month journey actually after the 2016 elections. I, basically lived out of my Prius, which is super California cliche, but I like went to Home Depot with a friend, put a little bed in the back, was trying to live my best van life moment. And I just drove my Prius to Republican meetups, to Trump rallies, to, places where, myself, if you're listening and you can't see me, I'm like an Asian American, I'm progressive, I'm queer. And I didn't hide any of those things, by the way. When I went and met people, I said exactly who I was. But the way that I, entered into the conversation was, look, I have all these stereotypes about you because the news and like people that I know tell me stories of who you are. But as a storyteller, I know the best place to get a story is from that person themselves. You are the only person that can really give me the truest truth of who you are. And, if you're open to, we're spending 4 or 5 hours in line, trying to get into this arena, would you be open to, sharing some of who you are? Because I don't want to just operate from the perspectives of other people. I want to hear it from you directly. And, I would really be honored to enter into a conversation with you. And people were really taken aback by that because I think it's our impulse today in this culture. When we hear, oh, you're a Trump voter, let's say as an example, I definitely feel this in the progressive community. You're illiterate, you're uneducated. We shout these, sort of derogatory statements. We know everything we need to know about this person. When there's such diversity in any political, anyone that votes for any candidate is not going to be the exact same people. Even, folks who vote for Trump aren't necessarily all going to be at a rally. There's, individuation of so much that we do not do. And we just say, oh, you're a Christian, you're a Trump rally, you're from the South, you're queer. I know everything I need to know about you, right? Because of that one identifier. And so I had all these great conversations at these Republican meetups and at Trump rallies. And I realized wow, you hurt just like I do. You have the same values of safety and family like I do. You've been othered like I have been because of the way you voted, and in my case, because of my sexuality. And that's a hard experience and makes us feel really isolated. And it was so much more connective than I think if I went in there and said, let me tell you why you're wrong. Let me tell you why you're voting on the wrong side of the issues. Let me tell you why that's not curiosity. That's incuriosity. And that it shuts the door to connection. And so, and I felt that in every sort of division. It wasn't just politics, it was people much older than me, or, people of different races, or, people of different socioeconomic statuses, whatever it is, we can come across and build bridges, with our differences, find this common humanity, if only we are starting from a place of curiosity.
We always used to say amazing leaders had this knack at not rushing to judgment. They asked questions.
Yep, exactly.
They were masters at asking questions. And again, high in curiosity.
Yeah.
What is the power, or let me go this way. For somebody that immediately wants to put their opinion in,
yeah,
how do you sort of instruct them to step back and ask questions in order to find a linkage or belonging with the person you're disagreeing with?
Totally. And curiosity is on a spectrum, right? So you have shallow on one side and then deep on the other. It's kind of like the ocean. I know you were saying that you like the ocean, so we're doing the ocean metaphor here. And shallow is more like, hey, what's your name? Oh, Mike. Okay, cool. Where do you live? Oh, awesome. What do you do for work? Or you're a storyteller, you got a podcast. Awesome. Love it. And that gives you some information about a person, but only until you slide down that spectrum and you go to the deep end, right? That's when you get to dive underneath the surface and see people as more than just this shallow surface level identifiers, right? So instead of asking what's your name, I might be like, Mike, tell me the story of your name. Who named you? Why were you named that? Tell me about people in your last name. It starts to give you a fuller picture of your family, your culture, your parents or whoever named you, the relationship you have with them, where they are right now, it's all of that. It just opens up so much more connection, right? Instead of saying, what do you do for work? You can say, what's exciting you right now, in life or on the job, or what are you getting pissed off about right now in your job? And that gives you so much more richness about how someone's feeling, in their job, or seeing them more than just their job, right? And so I think, we sometimes just stick to the shallow. We sometimes only stay in that area when we're meeting new people, or even with people that we are in relationships with. We go back for a family reunion and we feel comfortable in the shallow because it's less scary, right? It's scary to go out in the deep end. It requires a lot of courage, and even in the ocean too, as if we're sticking to that metaphor, like if you're diving, if you're, I'd scuba dive, if you're a diver, or even if you're, going out, past the break, as a surfer, you're heading into the deep end, and it's very scary, requires a lot of courage and competency, we stick to the shallow instead. But I'm encouraging and inviting people to move, slowly into the deep end, and to, courageously ask those more powerful questions like the ones I named. But, you don't start there. I think that can put people off too. If you just start and you're like, all right, I'm just meeting you for the first time. Like, all right, tell me about your worst heartbreak, and like, tell me about like your hardest, hardest moment of grief. Like, I want to know like who's dying in your life. That's like way too intense, overbearing. Yeah. It's inappropriate. And, I always say curiosity is not deserved, it's earned. So you got to like create that trust, you got to create that relationship before you get the opportunity to ask those kinds of questions.
So it is a skill that can be sharpened, that can be acquired and learned.
Yeah. It's a muscle. That's the way I like to say it. It's a muscle. Yeah, you can grow it, Yeah.
So for a lot of our listeners, we're trying to become the best versions of ourselves.
Yep.
We're on our own path and our own journey. I'm particularly interested that you tied it to your sort of, positive well-being. And you just talked about the voices for 6 months.
Yeah.
I don't think people take time to reflect or be introspective. How does it start with you?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's so important, right? There's 3 directions of curiosity. There's inward curiosity, which is how do I get curious about myself? What I care about, the relationships that are important to me, my emotions, my past, right? Then there's outward curiosity. How do I get curious about the people around me? Culture, institutions, systems, the world. And then there's the beyond. How do I get curious about what is not in the physical realm? So for some of us, that's the divine, God, consciousness, or even our ancestors, those who are no longer with us, or are, those who haven't been born yet, like 7 generations from now. How do we, think about the world that they're going to inherit, and change the ways that we act today to make it better for them. So that's the beyond. And I always tell people, start from the inward, start from getting curious about yourself, and, see how that feels for you before you start putting it on other people, so you can gain a comfort, a familiarity with it, and, a competency with it. Because like I said, it's like lifting weights, and, I think those big introspective questions, like let's say voices, you might not hear auditory voices like I did, but maybe you have that self-critical voice, or that voice of perfection, or that voice that's, that's sort of driven by shame, or, that voice that says you're not good enough, like, or whatever or that voice of someone else that's in your head, of your dad, or, an ex, or whatever it is. Sometimes we push those things away, and we say, okay, I don't want to deal with that. That's uncomfortable. I'm going to focus on the task at hand. But, that is inside of you, and it's yearning to be sort of, it's yearning for curiosity. What you're essentially saying is like, that doesn't matter to me, right? I don't want to hear you. I don't want to see you. I don't value you. And in many ways you're saying, I don't see myself. I don't value myself. I don't matter. When you're not willing to turn, just like I said, turning towards other people is about making them feel like they matter. If you're unwilling to turn at yourself, what you're really saying to everyone around you, your kids, your partner, your coworkers, is I don't matter, right? Because I'm not willing to do that work. I'm not willing to invest that time. So start there, because you do matter. Like everyone that's listening to this right now, like you matter, and you deserve to create a spaciousness for yourself to get curious about what's inside of you. And that's what helps you to like do those reps and get better and better and build those muscles. And then you can start going outward, and you'll see all the benefits that come with that around connection.
That just hit hard, man. Everything you just described about the self voices of lack of confidence, self-doubt. I'll be honest, man. I'm going through that right now. I've been somewhat successful in life. I know my past from special operations, but stepping out into the business world and being retired, it's been scary. And I think I'm avoiding those, I'll say this, when you avoid answering those questions or confronting those hard questions, those boulders, those obstacles remain in the way. And I've been having some conversations with mentors about, hey man, you've got to answer some of the voices.
Yeah.
This lack of confidence, this imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
That hits hard. In the book, do you give a framework?
Yeah. So just like, I'm a runner, a long time, 20 plus years of running. And, you wouldn't expect someone on the first day of running to like go run a marathon, right? You got to condition your way up to it, right? And so when I talk about me going to the opposing political party, I'm not expecting people to read this book and then be like, all right, I'm going to go to that Democratic rally, or I'm going to go to that Republican rally. Like, that's not what I'm saying. Like, that's like, running a marathon. You got to really train yourself, condition yourself to get to that point. So start smaller. What's the thing that you can do today in 5 to 10 minutes to be more curious? And also, what's the framework or the structure that helps you to understand like the regimen or the way to actually exercise this, right? Like, just like you would have a running plan, hills this day, do sprints this day. Okay, medium distance this day. I wanted to create something like that for curiosity, because it's not enough to just say, be curious. All right, good luck out there. Like, get curious about yourself and get curious about the world. Like, you need something concrete. So the model is the dive model. How do you dive underneath the surface into, that deep end? And so DIVE is an acronym, DIVE. It's the 4 core muscles of deep curiosity. So D stands for detach. How do you let go of your ABCs, your assumptions, your biases, and certainty? So how do you let go of that? How do you, sort of pour a little bit out of your cup so you can actually take new things in, new experiences, new conversations in? How do you interrupt your biases? How do you not just assume things about other people? And how do you, reward not just answers, which is something, for instance, in business school, like a lot of us are like trained to do, right? Or like even in school itself, right? Like having the answers, but actually how do we reward questions and exploration? And it's okay if it doesn't get you to like an end goal. Like, that's a part of the journey, So that's what detach is all about. I is intend. How do you create the mindset and the setting, for curiosity? So, you said you were going to, sit in ceremony. I'm wishing you blessing on all of that, and hope it gives you everything that, you're supposed to see and supposed to understand about yourself and your life and those around you. And like, also, I'm not saying to everyone when I brought up that, psychedelic journey I went on, sometimes this isn't the right channel for people. So I don't want everyone to think like this is the only way to do it. But if that is your journey, we often are told set and setting, right? What's your mindset going into the journey, and what's the setting you're in when you like sit in ceremony? The same is true for curiosity, right? What's the mindset you're having when you're going into that conversation with your coworker or with your kid, and you have to have a really tough conversation that's going to require a lot of curiosity? Have you eaten? Like, what's the temperature at? Like, have you slept well? Are you drinking? Like, like all of the things that might affect your mindset. And then also, what can we learn from sports? So I talk about sports psychologists like Alan Richardson. They've learned that there's this power in visualization. What's called mental rehearsal. You see yourself, envision yourself free throwing, hitting a basketball at the free throw line, or hitting a baseball with the bat. And you visualize that in your mind's eye, like over and over and over again. You'll actually improve your performance. And the same is true for curiosity. None of us a lot of us do not think through, like, what is this conversation going to look like? How am I going to come in? Where we're going to be? How am I going to respond, not react to things that might be triggering to me? What are the questions I'm going to be asking? So that's what, intent is all about. It's like, how do you really set yourself up with the right mindset, the right physical setting for that, for curiosity. V is value, which we need so much of right now in this world today, because it's all about how do we see the dignity of the people we're being curious about. It's about humanizing people. Unfortunately, right now, I can log on to social media, or I can be in a community conversation, and you can see dehumanization across the board. And it doesn't matter if it's politics, race, a geopolitical crisis abroad, like whatever it is, we are so dehumanizing so many people, and we can't access curiosity if we consider people as less than, as savages, as animals, as people that are worthy of being killed. That is not a healthy or positive way of being human and like being in community with one another. And so we have to start from there. And also, we sometimes dehumanize people unconsciously and in ways that we don't even recognize. It's not just the big flagrant, dehumanizations. It's, when our partner comes in that door and we're on our phone and they're trying to talk to us and we're more curious about, this reel that's in front of us, and we're human, we sometimes are going to mess up, and that's sometimes, going to happen because we need to cope, or, we've had a hard day ourselves and we got to create boundaries. But if that happens over and over and over and over again, in a way we're dehumanizing our partner because we're saying, you don't matter, I actually care more about this device than I do about you. And that doesn't make someone feel good, and doesn't, open up the doors for deep curiosity. And the last part of the model, dive, embrace, which I think everyone needs to hear right now, because it's all about welcoming the hard times. That is actually the most important moment to be deeply curious when you're going through transition, when you're grieving the loss of a loved one, when you're going through heartbreak, when you lost your job. Like, these hard moments can actually teach us so much about ourselves, about our strength, about the people who actually show up to us in our lives, who are there for us in times like this. Or that we need to create those communities so that we can have that the next time we go through something hard. When we are deeply curious in these moments, it teaches us so much about how to live more fully, more meaningfully, more connected with one another. And that's what E is all about. So DIVE, dive. Yeah.
That is a powerful framework. Detach, intend, value, embrace. I'm a little speechless. I'm going to remember that one. Just even in my encounters with people.
Exactly.
I think that's extremely invaluable and something that I need to work with.
Scott, I hope you do that. I was on another podcast with Chase Jarvis, and he was saying, ever since I learned dive, I'm talking to my wife. I'm talking to people I work with, and I'm remembering that, and it's kind of helping me to pause and remember to not come from this place of judgment, but instead with curiosity and more openness. And that's why I created the mod. I wanted people to have that thing in their back pocket that they could turn towards, in every conversation or situation, for sure.
There's acronyms or there's nuggets people can take from book and actually implement in their lives. Is what makes a great book.
Exactly.
And that's awesome. So I know you work for the UC Berkeley Greater Good Science Center.
Yes.
What an awesome name.
Yeah, it's an awesome place.
What's the focus?
Yeah, so the Greater Good Science Center, deeply in my heart, it is a center at UC Berkeley that really explores, what the research says about how we can live with more meaning and more connected relationships and better well-being. So there's all this psychological research out there about how to be happier, how to bring in, sensations of awe, how to be more curious, how to be kinder or more compassionate towards ourselves or others. So, we translate basically the research, because sometimes it's hard to read a white paper. You're like, what does this actually say? Especially if you're not, a PhD or researcher yourself. And so we shape them into videos or articles or quizzes or, things that people can engage with. And then say, oh, I'm a nurse, I'm a teacher, I'm a parent, I'm a student, I can take this knowledge that's from the research and apply it into my own life and my own work.
Is there any data that shows people high in curiosity either access different parts of the brain, or it leads to actual, I'm talking physical brain health?
Yeah. So we know a couple of things. So one, curiosity. When someone is curious and they're put under an fMRI machine, we know that they are releasing dopamine. So dopamine is, known as a happy hormone. It's, when we're having sex or eating a really delicious meal, we release dopamine. And, and there's also, it's I love dopamine. It's one of my favorite neurotransmitters. So that's really cool to know that when you're being curious, it's actually really pleasurable. It's enjoyable. And the reason why we release dopamine is because it wants to incentivize that behavior. Because when we were, our ancestors needed someone in the group to be curious, to find water or food, or, track that buffalo, or to learn how to build a fire, or, even social curiosity, right? To connect with other people and build a tribe or kin and, belonging. So that's why it's important to our survival, and it's encoded literally into our brains. And we also know from the research that curious people tend to be happier people. So they tend to have stronger relationships for many reasons. So there's research to show that curious people are less aggressive, and curious people and intellectually humble people are more liked and are friendlier and more communal. So people just vibe with you better. Like they want to come towards you. So I have a lot of friends who are like, in adult life, in my 40s and it's harder to make friends, especially my guy friends. And I'm like, just be curious. That's a great way to make solid friendships. People like you more. You seem friendlier. People want to be around you more. And also when you're curious, it actually has impacts on your longevity. That's like one of the coolest things, because it deepens your social connection, which we know from massive longitudinal studies, social connections are the most important thing for your life, and your longevity and living a healthy, happy life. And curiosity is the how to that, is how you create those social connections. But also there was a study that found that older adults who had higher levels of curiosity had lower levels of mortality. So I also tell my friends, you want to live and not die? Like be curious. And it makes sense. I talk to my elders and they're like, the minute that you stop getting curious about the world and you get disengaged and you stop being active and exploring and trying new things and learning, that's really when we deteriorate both in our mind and in our body. And I think it's pretty quick, when someone who is older and stops being curious, things just start to spiral in the health world for them, so it's really important for life, both the quality and the actual longevity of our lives.
It's interesting you say that. We had Stephen Kotler, if you know, the best, many-time best-selling author. He just wrote In Our Country. And on the podcast, he said they found data that showed people that are optimistic or positive live 7 years longer than those who are not.
Ooh, yes,
and
love that.
I'll take 7 years because you can become a master in almost anything in 7 years.
Absolutely.
But we also recently had a podcast with John Welborn, again, Berkeley graduate, played football there, then NFL 10 years. And he talked about the data he found on men. As they get older, they pull more inward or insular. And hence, if you looked at it, men have a younger mortality rate. They pass away, at an earlier age than women. Have you found biologically between men and women, are women higher in curiosity, or is it just personality dependent?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think, what my understanding of the research there is that it's definitely helpful to be around other curious people, so if you have really curious people around you, you're going to take on those behaviors just like we did as a kid, with our teachers or our parents, right? The same, it doesn't stop when we grow older. We are the product of the people that are closest to us. And so, looking around and being like, are the people around me curious, and if they are, you're likely to have a lot of curiosity, compared to if you were in a group that no one is curious, inward or outward. So that's a big thing. The second is, a lot of people think, curiosity is only for kids, like because my kid asked me, 30 questions about why this and, why is bluey blue and all these questions that, they have. But a meta-analysis of multiple research studies has found that we actually get more curious with age. So actually our elders are the most curious folks, that are around. And, it's not just for kids. It's not just for the creatives. And it makes sense because when you learn more things, you start to have more and more questions. And, what we're, selecting our curiosity to do and how we're vocalizing it might look different when we're older. But, now we have questions about spirituality, about our inner self, about our purpose, which are things that we didn't have, when we're 4 years old. So, I think that's always really reassuring too. And that it's accessible to everyone. Like I said, you're born with curiosity. The research shows that infants look at novel stimuli for longer than known ones. So we know it's not something that's taught to us. It's something that arises in us at birth. So you have it, you have the capacity to be curious. Doesn't matter, if you're rich or poor, what gender you are, what political party you come from, where you live, you have curiosity. It's just a muscle that you need to strengthen. And if you're not exercising it, like any other muscle, it's going to atrophy. So.
So if it's nature, if we're all born with curiosity, what's the biggest killer of curiosity in people? Is it environment, who you're around?
I think fear is a really big one. People get really, they get afraid of turning towards that person who's different from us, or asking that really hard question to their parent or to their partner or to their kid. Or they have fears of like exploring things inside of themselves. What am I going to find? What am I going to learn? Fears of exploring things in their partnership. Is this going to end our relationship or take us to hard places? I think fear holds us back from, being really curious. But paradoxically, we know that when you're curious about the things that you are afraid of, or that you're anxious about, it actually reduces the fear and the anxiety. So take end of life anxiety, for instance, right? When you're afraid of death, which is a scary thing, it's a lot of unknown. When palliative care physicians and nurses or end of life doulas, get curious towards you and create an environment of curiosity. What was your life like? Who was important to you in your life? How do you want to die with dignity? What do you want these moments to look like? What are you feeling right now? Whether that's negative or positive emotions. Like, I want to just acknowledge and validate and see you for who you are and be here with curiosity. That actually helps to alleviate the anxiety that folks feel and reduce some of the fear that they're feeling about, this big unknown that they're about to enter towards. So I think that's a big one. And I think the other is trauma. That can really hold us back from, accessing curiosity. I talked to trauma-informed therapists who are in the book. And, when you're deeply traumatized, you can't get curious about the world around you. You have to heal first and really get through that experience of healing and reparation. But, Kevin Becker, one of the therapists I interviewed, he says curiosity is the barometer for healing. So that means that when he sees his patients start to be curious again, they're asking questions, they're getting curious about themselves, about others, that's when we know that they're healing. So, curiosity is a barometer of healing. I mean, that's just one of my favorite lines from the book, honestly, because if you're feeling hurt, curiosity is sort of your companion, to access that healing. And curiosity is that companion to help you reduce that fear and anxiety in your life.
I just wrote it down.
Yeah.
Curiosity is a barometer for healing. That's, from my observations, not empirical data, the guys who I served with who had multiple combat deployments, which trauma comes with those deployments to war, the ones that dived into sleep and plant-based medicine and oxygen chambers and they were proactive in getting curious about all the ailments and what modalities were out there, were the ones that got to health to a higher extent and at a faster rate. So that's again, that hits home. Much like you talk about that self voice.
Thanks,
Scott.
For that.
Again, congratulations to you. I cannot wait to get my hands on the book.
Yes.
So I will go to Amazon. I'll purchase it. Of course, I'm going to leave a review because author to author. That's what we do. But again, no pun on words. Maybe it's my lack of vocabulary. I'm really curious to dive into this thing because even, this book right here, The Talent War, we talked about 9 major attributes of high performers. And curiosity was one of those 9 of like the 75 we started with and whittled it down to 9. Even a amazing woman near you, Tracy Keogh, who was the CHRO of HP, Hewlett Packard, highest paid CHRO in the world, said her number one attribute that she found with high performers was curiosity, regardless of age. And those are the people that stayed in the organization.
I agree.
So where's the best place to find the book? I'm assuming Amazon, where books are sold?
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's in, Support Your Indies. It's in big box stores like Target and Barnes & Noble. It's online. You can also go to seekthebook.com. There's all the links to buying books there. And and I really look forward to hearing from you and from anyone else that reads it. Slip it to the DMs, email me. My contact info is on the book website. I really want to hear from people. That's my favorite part about being an author is, learning about what your key takeaways are, what resonated with you, what you thought of the book, how you're applying it. So please reach out. I really do answer, pretty much all the DMs that come through. So
I'm usually interested in the bad reviews more than I am the good. The good is
it gives you insight.
If somebody leaves a 3-star, I'm like, what was it that did not resonate with you? Give it to me. Feedback is great, especially the bad. So I'm assuming you're a keynote speaker. Do you work with organizations? Do people go to seek.com to find you, to bring you into their organization?
100%. Yeah. I've done things at schools, at companies, I work with, community organizations, I'm here to be in service of y'all. If you are looking at your culture in your workplace or at your school and you're like, wow, we really need more curiosity. For instance, on college campuses right now, I think that's a huge need. There's a lack of curiosity and way too much canceling and cutting and, dehumanization that's happening. So, that's happening in the workplace. It's really happening. I mean, there's really no place where, that wouldn't need, a more curiosity. So yeah, I'm happy to work with you and make sure that you're set up for success to create a culture of curiosity. Yeah.
Well, Scott, again, amazing work. Glad that you still live in the Bay Area. The folks are there. Beautiful, beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, totally.
Hey, thanks for giving us the time. Congrats on the success. I know you did the media circuit this morning. Good Morning America, was it?
The Today Show. Yeah, Today Show.
Today Show. Even better. Well, brother, thank you. We'll direct people towards the site. And to all the listeners, thank you for joining us. Remember, go leave a review on whatever podcast platform you listen to. Leave a review. Write it out. We actually do read them, and it's our mechanism for getting better, both the good and the bad. And I'm not going to tell you leave only a 5-star review. Leave what you feel. All right, guys, this has been the Men's Journal Everyday Warrior Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sorelli, with Scott. Go buy his book, Seek.
Woo.
How Curiosity Can Transform Your Life and Change the World. And who doesn't want to do that? All right, Scott, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Mike. Appreciate you.